sessions. Today we talk about public speaking. I really wonder, will there be any opportunity for us to speak in public? Will there be a cohort of say 100, 200 people gathering at one place, giving us an opportunity to speak? I still have my own apprehensions about it. But despite that, it's good, of course, if we can learn public speaking. It always makes sense. Let's see what best can be done today, and learning this public speaking is all the time interesting. And even if you are conducting a session online, probably these public speaking can probably help you. Okay, I don't think that it's completely ruled out, it's discounted completely, but still I feel. And I've been sharing my thoughts, feelings, sentiments, reminiscences, and I express my views candidly. And public speaking, of course, is something that has to be learned by all. Absolutely necessary, of course, whatever be the field you are in. When you have to communicate to people, several people, of course, large gatherings, if it's possible. Certainly, of course, this is an art that everybody has to cultivate. Thank you very much, Ramana Prabhu, Chandu Garu. Okay, fine. I just move on. Then where should this be taught? Public speaking. I always expect the citadels of learning, particularly the schools. All the narratives and discourses must be taught. And if at all you call your institutions a harbinger of quality education. And this public speaking is propedeutic instruction it is. I don't think it is an extra instruction and all. Totally it is the base of any kind of instruction. Public speaking must be taught. And people, when they're speaking in a class, Nagaraj gar namaste. People, when they're in a class, I encourage them to speak, to question the veracity of the teacher. And they must be assertive. And they should not feel bad to speak. It is not any kind of impoliteness or disobedience. Therefore, most of my classes are interactive, engaging, and at the same time, students put a lot of questions. And therefore, public speaking is an art cultivated in the classrooms at a very engaged, propedeutic, as I told. It is just fundamental. So I don't think there should be any kind of necessity for adults to go somewhere, learn the public speaking and all that, unless it was learnt in, at the primary level, in schools, etc. What does a public speech, what does it have? I just tell you, when you're giving a public speech, matter is more important, 60%. Manner is only 40%. Many people think that manner is important. The delivery mechanism, the gestures, your eye contact, your engaging the people, and pause, your emphasis. But I tell you, all these nuances are important, definitely, like the delivery mechanism, your body language. But my conservative estimate is that it's only 40%. 60% of any speech, it's the content. Without that, you can't pull on your speech. People, they don't want to waste their time. They want to carry something home. You can't think of wasting their time. I just underline this. And therefore, as far as the matter is concerned, you should have a thorough preparation. The content, I strongly tell you very emphatically that the content is important. I see many people, they're so verbose, so superfluous. They use so many words which are not necessary, using so many adjectives. At the end of the day, if you are using a particular word, justify that word. You can't use a word which is not required there. Instead of using the two words, if you're using one word, perhaps you are a great speaker. And this is most important actually. Matter 60% and the delivery mechanism is only 40%. There is a general formula to, like structure your speech. I don't know if it really works for you, but still you can, like many people have used this one. The first part, it's a preview. Tell what you're going to tell. I repeat this one. Tell what you're going to tell. Means give a preview of what you're going to speak. Give a hint to them, gist of that. And the second one is tell. Tell what you are going to tell. That is announcing the topic. And the second one is a tell. And I tell you here, the third one, tell with intensity. Show your conviction. Be emphatical there. And show your intensity. That's the third step. Tell with the intensity. And finally, and tell them what you are expecting from them. This is called so what. So what? What is that you are expecting from them? Is it any behavioral modification? Is it any, like a program where you want to deliver the knowledge? Is it something that you want to build a skill there? And the purpose must be well defined and they should understand that. I just want to repeat my 4 stages here. Tell what you are going to tell. Tell. Tell with intensity. And tell what you are expecting from them. So if this structure suits you, I think it's okay. You can manage. If you want to have a different structure, and probably you can take it. It's your prerogative, and you, at your discretion, you can think of changing this. Many people, it changes depending on the audience, the demographics, and you do the knowledge they've got, and the topic you are choosing, and it depends on several parameters. Okay, then what I expect from a good speech, if I have to define that, I look at the vocabulary. I look at the words chosen by the speaker. It must be really impressive repertoire of vocabulary. I'm very keen about it. Is he using the appropriate words in the context or not? An impressive repertoire of vocabulary is something what I expect from every speaker. And the second thing I expect from them is flawless accent. The language you are choosing, no matter whether it's a vernacular or English, the accent must be flawless. You have to rehearse before going to your final stage and all that. So flawless accent, neutral accent, with a little, maybe avoiding your mother tongue influence and all that. Conscious effort you have to make for that. And you can talk about some anecdotes, but it is a non-circuitous flow of anecdotes. Non-circuitous flow, straight from the heart. Your voice must be firm, but it's a mellow voice, soft voice. Soft but mellow voice. But it's a persuasive style of voice, trying to convince them, trying to take them along with you. But at the same time, you engage your audience. It's a conversational engagement of audience. Make sure that your audience are participating. And that you have to take care. Sometimes you have to put a question. Sometimes you have to, raise some statistic there which can enthuse them. But the ideas, what you're discussing, they must be authentic. Declamatory ideas, authentic ideas, no shaky ideas. And you have organized your content. Take just 2 or 3 points. But make sure that the content what you're delivering there has got the authenticity about it. And sometimes your audience may get bored, but you should think of elliptical satires to draw the attention of your cohort. You are playing with your satires, a bit of humor, but make sure that these are used to draw the attention. If somebody is just, like getting, like inattentive, bring them back again. Then it can be thought-provoking when you are presenting your facts and figures. But mind you, there must be eloquence in that. Don't wait, okay, I want to recall this number, that number. Particularly when you're talking about the statistic, I don't want you to talk about too many numbers, but instead analyze that and tell them what inference you can draw from that. So the statistic you are presenting all the time, it should be thought-provoking, eloquent, and facts and figures, of course, which are verified. And they should have contextual coherence and relevance. If it is required, you just bombard them with all the statistics. Otherwise, of course, there's absolutely no need for you, because that can be boring, giving a kind of ennui there. Lyrical and ornate articulation of feelings. You see, the feelings when you're articulating, of course, you decorate that, ornate it, embellish it. But if you want to use hi-fi words, don't use them just for using. No orotund, turgid, ponderous, parenthetical language just because you have to use. That doesn't make any sense. If you can continue and maintain the same flow, probably you can use. But don't use some words because you want to use there. And doesn't make sense if it is not a homogeneous presentation. Your speech must be succinct. Succinct, just enough words. Don't carry too many words with you. It must be stylish coverage of content. The content must be covered. You can't leave it incomplete, leaving it for the audience to imagine it and fantasize and all that. It should be covered. At the same time, of course, the words you're using, just enough. We say succinct. And these are the things that make an imposing public speech. So many qualities, of course. The choice of words, the accent, the construction of epigrammatic sentences, your ideas, your thought-provoking, the style on the whole, everything makes sense there. People love to listen to you, like, only when there is some content, not just, something you also ran like. I just want to tell you something here. This is mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana about a speech. I just pick up 5 words from that, because today's public speaking should be completely in English. But having felt that there is an absolute need to make a reference to them, I just want to mention 4 words from my Sanskrit script there. The first quality of a good speech is avistaram. Don't give an elaborate speech unless you are expected to speak for such length. It's not elaborate. It's not elaborate. Don't, run over time. When you're given 5 minutes, it is just 5 minutes. Close it just 5 seconds before that. And that is important. Avistaram. You can't be too elaborate and all that. I want to tell you the advantage of this one. I don't explain anything because my audience all the time are lucid and intelligent and they can understand it. Why should I explain? If they are not competent to understand my language, they don't sit in my group. Just because the people are sitting in my audience, I expect them to understand at least the gist of that. And therefore, I strictly follow this principle, avistaram. The next one is asandigdam. There is no confusion. There is no conundrum. There is no ambiguity. And there is nothing that gives them two kinds of meanings. It is all the time singular. It won't give them a scope to misunderstand that. The words chosen are so clear. There is no room for ambiguity there. Asandigdham. And the next point is no vilambana. Avilambitam means don't delay when you're speaking. The flow, the fluency, the continuity of that is, like without any breaks. People can't wait for an idea when it is emanating from you. And therefore, don't try to delay. The ideas, they just surge and they're waiting for it. They're expecting to draw something. And therefore, there should not be any kind of delay. No business in between. But remember, it starts from the penury of heart. It should start from the heart. Urasthakantagam vakyam vardhate majjamaswaram. It should start from the penury of heart and reaches the medium range voice. There's no reason for you to shout. And that job is done by the public address system. Why do you have a microphone, amplifier, and a speaker? There's no reason for you to shout. Even when I chat with the people, even when I use my messenger, I use only lowercase letters. I don't use even capital letters. Because I understand very categorically that capital letters, if I use, it is shouting. All the time, even while chatting, of course, I use only lowercase letters. And therefore, it is essential for you, take it to the medium range. But when you are holding the mic, let me tell you, between 6 inches and 12 inches, if you maintain the distance, you don't get that bass voice, like change of pitch. And therefore, maintain it straight in front of your mouth, and there are no extraneous sounds, and keep the mic in a proper place, position the mic properly, and I tell you, I think it won't be irritating for them. Okay, fine. Having learned that, there is an important point given in Sanskrit, the same Ramayana. They say Kantara Vela. This is the beauty of entire public speech. Kantara Vela means speak in your own words. Never try to imitate somebody. You may be liking Atal Bihari Vajpayee or Pramod Mahajan or P. Chidambaram or Shashi Tharoor. You may have your own people, of course, to emulate. But at the end of the day, what people expect from you is your own words, your own construction of sentences, and your own ideas. That's called upajna. It's all originality. And that makes all the difference. And therefore, you can't think of borrowing words from somebody. I see so many people here. They all are learning public speaking. I see the same story from them. I see the same humor from them. I see the same kind of infusing that positive attitude, the same stories. When you're using your narratives and discourses, make sure that it's all original. But I tell you something what George Bernard Shaw has suggested. It doesn't look nice if I use it, but still, I just want to tell you. What he said is, when you stand behind the rostrum to speak to people, think for a while that the people who are listening to you are ignorant of what you are speaking. I repeat, because this idea has to assimilate. Don't think that the people who are listening to you, they know more than you. And that gives you nervousness. And you will be, like you have to fumble for the words. And you have to grope for the words. And therefore, think for some time. It is just an imagination that the people who are listening to you are ignorant of the topic you're dealing with. And that gives you a lot of confidence. And probably you can make an impressive speech, particularly when you think that you are an authentic person, and you should be. Okay, and now how do you introduce, how do you start a speech? Generally, when you start speaking, you don't request them, please listen to me, may I draw your attention, please. Can you all, why should you request actually? Like, when you are a guest, when you are there to speak, it's your day, it's your time. And that's the reason the person who introduces you, he just says only one thing, the floor is yours. The person who is introducing you with all the words, they say only one thing, come on, the floor is yours. Say, therefore, you have to take the whole thing into your control, like the audience and everything. They have come to listen to you, and you are the supreme commander of the hall and every resource in that. And therefore, there is absolutely no need for you to request that, please listen to me. Don't go and deliver a speech where you have to request the audience to listen to your speech. It is ridiculous, in fact. They should wait with rapt attention, and you must go there as commander, and you should deliver the speech. That's what they require. Come on, that's what. Then how do people introduce a speech? Many times they start with a statistic, a startling revelations. It can be your own narration of your own experience. It can be a poem. It can be a song which can be touching. And it can be like, your own, way of presenting it. But I tell you one thing, introduction is very, very important. And that is going to make everybody start listening to you with all that. And that should be captivating. If your speech is captivating in the beginning, and the flow can continue till the end, and therefore introduction is very, very important. But mind you, don't make an introduction alienate from rest of the text. If you are coming out with a startling revelation, justify that. There must be an adequate evidence for that. There must be something to substantiate your claims which you made in the beginning. And it should be connected to the central theme. And therefore, the introduction is not just for introduction. It is you just started, and it takes the flow. It takes the audience along, mesmerizing them. Fine. In the body of your speech, you do not have too many points, of course, and messing them up. Confusion. You just tell them, I firstly want to talk about this. And my second point is this. And lastly, let me tell you, that's it. 3 points. 3 points. If it is possible, boil down all your content into 3 simple points and just close it. Wrap it up. Don't continue it, of course, when the interest is lost. You can read the mind of the audience if you are a discerning speaker, whether the people are interested in you or not. Quickly you can see, why do people say eye contact? Eye contact is only for that, whether they're interested or not. When there is a kind of ennui in them, boredom, and it is time for you to change the topic and tell them, of course, ask them 1 or 2 questions, bring them back, and that should be done, of course, very, like that there must be a seamless transition. Don't go to draw the attention, because these transitions are, very, very, I don't know, like how people handle. Some of them, they're wonderful. They are the transition time when you're switching from one point to another point. They do it so well. And I really like some speakers, how they use even the pause. I really like some people. They stop for a while and immediately they draw the attention. Oh my God, what is going to tell? That was the next point. And pause also they use. But I tell you, one thing that's all the times told in public speaking, the training programs, voice modulation. Voice modulation is a God's gift. It is not everybody's cup of tea. But only if you can learn that with a lot of practice. So sometimes you put some force on words. Sometimes you put force on some words. Sometimes they're just light. And sometimes it depends on, that the emphasis you have to lay on that particular aspect. Sometimes you use the force, and sometimes it's such a mellow voice to convince them. And this voice modulation, and that is very, very important actually, which can be learned by a lot of practice. I tell you, like, lot of speech practice, the craft, of course, you have to master. Many people, they're afraid of speaking in public. Their communication skills, of course, like maybe when they're, one-to-one, they're very good. I don't know when when they have to speak in public, of course, they start sweating. They fumble for words. And they're a bit shaky. The body language, it's not comfortable. It tells that they, like it's nerves. But I tell you one thing, with all the practice, you can have wonderful gestures. So if the gestures, the body language, the eye contact, and the emphasis, and all these things, they just come very intuitively, very naturally you learn them. And it's not that by, like there is a book, you have to write the rules and you have to apply the rules and all that. And therefore, and if you are in teaching profession or if you're a trainer, of course, it's all the time essential for you. When you are thorough with the content, all these things need not be taught. When you are thorough with the content, I repeat this point actually. I think rest of the things, they're only details. When you don't have ideas which you are able to retrieve, and there is no continuous flow, and definitely all these things will come. And therefore, I tell you, the body of your speech should have limited number of ideas and substantiate with examples, figures, and to infuse humor, you can tell them, of course, a joke. Make sure that it is relevant and don't bring in just because you have to use that joke there. But I tell you, of course, you're finished. But the last punch is important actually. The closing is important. And the closing is, I just give you one example here. If you are talking about a fundraising for a flood relief program or some rehabilitation, at the end of your speech, half the audience should take out their wallet and start contributing. Or they should make a promise that they would pay. And then your speech is a success. And this is what is required. I've seen a number of audience, of course, number of speakers. And the effect is so much. it makes an impression on the mind. So indelibly, it gets registered so strongly. The message is loud and clear, and the speech is remembered for a long time. It's not forgotten. It's always green in the memory. And such speeches which are very imposing, they all come by practice. And therefore, my point is, what your audience is going to remember is your closing. The way you wrap it up, the way you wind up your speech. And therefore, you should think so much about this winding part, because this is what you are expecting from them. Because people want to carry a message when they are going home. Having heard you for a fairly long time, at the end they want that point actually, like, what is that I am carrying home? What is that I remember? If I have to put it down on paper, what important point I have here, so that I can just jot it down on paper and say, this is what I've learned from this. So every speech, literally and figuratively, has got a message, and that is a very, very important one. And that tells them your strong presence in the audience. That highlights. And therefore, having finished your speech, if you have finished that, make sure that you are maintaining your time. Whatever time you are given, you should ask the organizers, whether it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes. But stick to your time. Don't go late, and just close your speech on time. Both are important. Because if a speaker goes, say, to a place, of course, where he has to deliver speech, 5 minutes late, I construe it this way. There are 500 people waiting for you, and 5 minutes you are late. Effectively, 2,500 minutes you have wasted. You don't have any right to waste the time of your audience. You should respect their time too. And therefore, never do you go late, never you take more time than what is stipulated. You should close it. That's it. If the audience, if any request comes from the organizers, usually what happens, you start speaking in a very unprepared way. And don't allow the organizers to make a request to you, sir, the next guest has not come, please continue. This is ridiculous and preposterous, in fact, like, you are not an entertainer there. So don't continue your speech because the next speaker is not there. Tell them it's over. That's it. You prepare, present it, and close it. You can't reopen it. But let me tell you honestly one thing. If you are a good speaker, you can do one thing. I don't mind taking some questions from you. You can have a Q&A session. And that's more important, actually. You can allow the audience to pose some questions, and don't promise that you can answer all the questions. May not be possible. But let me tell you, of course, if you can answer the questions at the end, probably they love it, because they can seek clarifications. They've got every right to do that. And sometimes they can contradict. They can deny the facts you've mentioned. There can be a point, of course, there can be a discussion, which sometimes can turn pretty hostile. There's nothing wrong in that. You may differ in your ideologies. And therefore, if you have limited audience, probably you can pass on the mic to them. And I just want to narrate an experience at IIT Bombay. And the speaker was none other than Kamal Haasan. Okay, and Kamal Haasan, I like him for all his acting. Absolutely no qualms. I like him. Though I differ with his ideology. Though I'm a political, but his political ideology, I don't concur with him. But still, I like him as an actor. A lovely actor. Fine. When he comes to IIT Bombay, he says only one thing. I want to spare you from all the boring lectures. Look at the words he is using. I want to spare you from all the boring lectures, bereft of sense. My God. He's, like making remarks on the other guests, like bereft of sense. You can ask me questions, I will answer. And this needs courage. Remember that. When you are standing in front of people, who are wise, intelligent, seasoned, and you're asking them, come on, you can ask me questions. And it's throwing a challenge. And that is Kamal Hassan. When people ask him questions, he takes them in his own style. He takes the question in his own style. And he has got his inimitable style of answering the questions. And that shows his experience. I want to tell you about something that is important. Kamal Hassan was an 8th class dropout. No formal education in any college, university. None of them, he didn't have any education right under the, like any institution of any statutory body. But remember, an 8th class dropout can stand and allow the audience to pose questions. That's what a speaker is all about. If you can answer the questions, which can be rather tricky, and that sometimes they can probably, like nullify and annihilate what you have told, and question the very contention of that. And my God, how you are going to justify? It's not that all the respect people have for you. Some of the interviews, if you see, even Sadhguru, students from Nalsar pose so many questions to him, sometimes making blatant remarks. And you look at how cool Sadhguru is, Jaggi Vasudevji, in handling Q&A. And that is what is important. Any speaker, when he is giving a public speech, he is prone for all the things. He's prone for all the things. Anybody, like, you are vulnerable. You can't say that, no, I have an iron shield. I don't take questions. Whatever I have come prepared, I'll speak and just go. No. When you are a guest, when you are speaking there, whether you're a keynote speaker or not, there can be questions from the audience, because that's the crux of the story. If you can allow them, you can take up some questions. Maybe 3 questions or 5 questions, depend on the time. And therefore, my point here is, keep some time. Sometimes there can be, I used to face some questions, sir, we want your phone number, we want your mail ID. People ask me simple questions that's okay, no problem. Sir, please clarify that point once again, because it was clear for them. It was a muddy point for us. People, when it's not clear for them, of course, some of the words I'm using, they may ask me, sir, what's the word you've used? Of course, please repeat. I don't mind sometimes, of course, if they say that, okay, this is the word I used there. It is possible. Sometimes they may not get the clarity, but they're very keen to learn. Remember this, with a good intention, they're asking. With a good intention, when they're asking, of course, it is your responsibility. It is imperative that you should make sense for you to answer the question. And therefore, you be prepared for a speech. A question. A question, it can be, even during the speech, sometimes don't feel that it's a disturbance. When somebody raises the hand, ask the question, of course, to seek some clarification, know the intent and the point which is not clear to them. There can be some kind of turbidity. And fine, you have to make it clear to them. And that shows that you are an authentic person. Okay, fine. Having done this one, there is a little exercise that you should do even at the beginning. Before you go to a particular place, it's all the time good if you know the audience. Who are they? What are their qualifications? And what is that I'm supposed to speak? Am I the right person to speak? Don't go to places. Don't go to places when you are when you're not the right person. When you're not the right person, of course, don't. You can just simply say that this is not my my domain. And therefore, when you go there, make sure that you are the right person there. And therefore, when you are asked to speak on a particular topic, make sure that it's your topic. You're an authentic person. You know the details there, and ask about the audience. Okay, the target group, how many are there, and what kind of qualifications they have got, what kind of experience they've got, what is that they're expecting from you, and all these basic details if you have, and probably you can prepare your speech much better than what you normally go and just deliver. There's a lot of preparation is required. I just tell you, don't take anything easy. When somebody is in your audience, when he's sparing some time for you, it's the respect they have got for you. I can't take it easily. When I stand and speak there, I have to value their time. And they should get some point, of course, which they are not aware of that. And I also should give them a roadmap. My speech shall have essentially, I repeat my point, my speech shall have essentially a roadmap, a plan of action. And I should tell them, this is the path you have to traverse. Step 1, step 2, step 3 and all that. And I can't leave them in jeopardy and saying them, come on, you can draw your own map and all that. They have come and I should tell them, this is what you have to do. So I should describe the course, step 1, step 2, step 3 and all that. And if they're convinced, fine, they can take it as it is. But if they're not convinced, they can customize it, make some modifications, accommodations there. And this is what is required actually. And any speaker, essentially when you're talking to some audience, make sure that you give them a plan of action. And that's the most important aspect of a speech. And therefore, I just want to conclude by taking a few points here and there. I also want to take a few questions from the audience. You can try in the chat box. You can send a message to me. The most important one, preparation is essential. Number 1, know your audience, and preparation is essential based on the dynamics of what you're going to speak. You must be familiar with that preparation of your speech. Second one, cover completely, but don't be too elaborate. Maybe just 2-3 points, you can just touch upon them because it takes time. Points are only 2 or 3. Point number 3, don't carry a script, a paper with notes, and you feel like going through it. You feel like reading it. And the flow of ideas definitely gets disturbed. But you can do one thing. Even Shashi Tharoor, in his TED speeches, he carries a few points, small cards you can carry. You have 1 point, 2nd point, 3rd point. You can keep, if this is done, you keep it down. Just see the point and elaborate that. You're not reading it. Remember this very carefully. It is only to remind you the points you have to cover. Sometimes, of course, it can be incomplete. It can be incomplete if you are not, don't have the points there. That's the reason many people, they use a PowerPoint presentation. But it's preposterous many times if you have a PowerPoint presentation, Don't start reading, because they can read it. Your audience can read it. By having a PPT and you have put a lot of text in that, and you start reading that. And in some presentations, particularly in the technological presentations, the speakers, they use some visual aids. They show something. They demonstrate something. They demonstrate something. And that's good, of course, if you have a visual aid in front of you. It's good. Suppose you want to talk about maybe pessimism, optimism, and all that. I found a speaker carrying some water. He said it was half full. Some people said it's half empty. But he said only one thing, like it is a half with water, the other half is filled with air. It's full all the time, like, you know. There is nothing like an empty glass anytime, of course, because there is air in that. So something you can interpret that, of course, when you show something to them, when you show that and you can demonstrate and you can drive them to a point. Usually this is done by, you know, people in the laboratories in the universities. When they are in the laboratories, they take something and demonstrate that object and tell them this is what I want to say. Sometimes if you feel that your speech has to have an object for demonstration, it's good, but make sure that it is visible to the one in the last row. If you have large audience and maybe, you know, like 20 rows, 30 rows, when you carry something, of course, which is not visible and doesn't make any sense. And therefore, when you're carrying something which you want to demonstrate, it is all the time good for you to make sure that it's large in size so that people in the last row can see. Otherwise, it's not fair. You're showing something that's not visible to them, they get disturbed. Anything, of course, I tell you. The next, in the practice, of course, you also have to practice certain words you're going to use. When I go to speak somewhere, I just pick up some relevant words. I want to give you one example here. When I go to some Christian missionary institutions, I just take some verses from the Bible. But I must be pretty sure that what I read, I make a reference and I read it properly, because respecting the holy book. And that's what I want to say. Okay, when you are using certain words, particularly the proper nouns, your pronunciation must be right. If you want to mention the name of a guest, but you write the name properly and the pronunciation must be appropriate. Otherwise, you are insulting the person. And this is rehearsing the speech part. And I just told you the structure, closing and introduction. And if my speech is not structured properly, of course, it's okay, like you can just pick up whatever is sensible for you. And talking about the structure is very, very important for any speaker. And that structure, as I told you, don't make too many points, limited number of points connected to each other. And there must be coherence there. And the points must be relevant. And everything is related to the central theme. And use the words, of course, which are original and you're comfortable to them. Sometimes you want to use a word, you can't retrieve that, and therefore you have to rehearse that. And I tell you, the speeches what you're giving, of course, they make truly wonderful and people remember them. I want to take a few questions from you. The time now is 21:25, 9:25. Yeah, one or two questions I don't mind taking. A speaker who uses original words is a perfect speaker. Jitendra, that's the right point. Original words, okay, not borrowed word. That's a really one. And thank you so much, sir, for your valuable. Okay, fine, excellent session, wonderful information. And Srinivas Chauhan Garu, some words are hard to understand. Definitely, I know that. I tell you the reason why I use words. I am a teacher, and of course, you are also a teacher. When I speak to my students, I want them to improve their vocabulary. And therefore, I use some difficult words. When I use those words very frequently, they learn. I don't underestimate any student of mine. And therefore, as a teacher, I use some difficult words. Maybe I say new words. I don't say difficult. I say maybe I use new words so that it's how we improve their vocabulary. At least they have learned certain words. Like they write the words, they refer to the dictionary, they know the meanings, and that's how we improve their language. And many times, of course, I construe it rather like this. They have come to learn something from my speech. It can be the words, it can be my sentence construction, it can be my idea, it can be my message, or it can be anything, the way I organize myself. So any of these things, of course, people are waiting to emulate from me, and therefore I have to set a benchmark, set standard, and that's the reason I use some words. Probably people may not be familiar with them, but it's not intentional. Words come automatically because it's my experience that tells. Actually, I'm not a novice. I got 30 years of experience. My 3 decades will probably tell me the language I'm using. It comes after 30 years, and therefore sometimes the words may not be familiar to all. Okay, that's a very simple answer. And thank you so much, Ramana Garu. And anybody is asking a question. Do I have a question? Is there any connection between public speaking and language? Oh, from an English teacher. Okay. And how can we practice voice modulation? Sir, Chandrasekhar, this is a very pertinent question. Very pertinent question. I tell you, like, public speaking and language, I can connect both. But I can tell you one thing. When your language is, effective, like succinct, okay, and people are looking for an idea in that. People are looking for an idea in that. When you are presenting an idea, you must use appropriate words. You can't, there is no substitute many times. You can't use some other words for it. And therefore, the flair for the language and the choice of your words and certainly will make an impact on the audience. And therefore, your public speech can be more effective if you have got a good hold on the language. You can't deny that. Sometimes you've got good ideas, but if your language is not supporting, probably you may not do justice for what you've thought about. And therefore, this is the connection actually. See, you should get support from your language, and so that you can make your public speaking impressive and effective there. And voice modulation, this is another important question he has asked, Chandrasekhar. You have to read in such a way, you're an English teacher also. Children, they understand it even if they do not know the words. When you're talking about the roaring of a lion, it can be ferocious. And language is that. People understand between the lines. A language has got life. And how can it be so pale and straight and flat without life? And therefore, voice modulation must be practiced, and that you are pumping life into your words. And even when you are reading your poetry, make sure that you understand the summary of that, and accordingly, you are giving and reading the poem there, reciting the poem there, in such a way that children understand, and they understand the beauty of the rhyme there, and they know the summary even if they don't understand all the words. And that's the beauty of reading the text and reciting a poem. And even when you are narrating a story, and there are some people, of course, they are known for telling a story. I really like them. And it's so captivating they are. The audience, they completely engross. And it's so enticing for them, every bit of it. And they just look at them for the word that's coming next. How to improve in construction of speech? Oh my God, Narendra Garu. That's a good question. I just tell you, sir, it depends on the kind of speech you are making, number one, and divide that into some parts. Okay. This is what we mean by organizing our thoughts. I repeat my point. It's only organizing your thoughts. So when you have the thought flow, and you should be able to put them in order. The first, next, and all that. And they shouldn't be contradictory. And it's all the while important, like you should be able to connect the dots. And that's the most important one. Connecting the dots. You have a number of dots, but I just tell you what is important is how you are connecting them so that you have a beautiful story to narrate. It should be like a story. And if they take this message somewhere, and they should be able to do it because you have woven the words in such a way that there is a thread going and they just can take it anywhere. Even if it is a 10-minute or 15-minute speech, you just have arranged them so well. You have made a garland there and it just is taken elsewhere. And therefore, the construction of a speech is all about connecting the dots. And that's the most important one. And all the time, I just tell you, when you're speaking, even if you are doing it time and again, you are very comfortable with the topic. When you're going in front of the people, rehearse once again, practice it, and read it, of course. And I always strongly believe that when you have to cut a tree, when you're given 6 hours time, 5.5 hours for sharpening the axe, half an hour you cut the tree. And therefore, when you are going to deliver a speech, sharpen your axe before going to cut the tree. Sharpen your axe. Spend more time for that rehearsal. And then, when you are finally on the stage and you are drawing everybody's attention, there is no wavering there. You are just, that's the rapt attention. At the end, they say, oh my God, is it over? Is it over? Oh, I thought it would continue further. That's the stage you have to stop. That's the stage. And thank you so much, everybody who has participated. And I really have enjoyed. It's an enriching session for me. And I really must be thankful to all the people who participated actually. And yeah, see you some other time with some other topic.